Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It is so good to be back with you today on our third encounter for the study of this book, this amazing book called The Integral Human Being. I would like to invite you to continue to be with me, to ride along this journey as we study together, as we break down, dissect the topics of this book together. And today, if you think about it, we're going to our second chapter. It's called Routine. And I have to tell you that it took me by surprise, but we are going to break it down. What is the plus and minus? And don't be afraid. Joanna de Angelis, the spiritual author, really starts to bring a lot of the negatives of this simple word routine that to me, personally, very frank, is such a good thing. Habits, habit forming, discipline, routine are really important to me. And she calls attention to certain things that may not be so good. So this chapter was especially meaningful to me as we go through that, and I plan to be as clear as possible. But let's just, before we get even there, just want to remind everyone here with me today that the psychology series or the psychology collection, as it is called, is a 16 book series written by our amazing spiritual author Joanna de Angelis in close collaboration with Divaldo Pereira Franco. I hope you get to know their work and get as excited as I am to learn, to read, to learn, to understand, to grow with all that there is contained herein. But in any case, we will be discussing, and it's important to understand from a spiritist perspective and a psychological perspective, we can see things very apart. And Joanna de Angelis' main focus on this during this psychological series or psychology collection was actually to build a bridge, forgive me, build a bridge between spiritism as in an entire body work and the depth psychology, for many people also known as transcendental psychology. So next few weeks it's going to be, there are 40 chapters, so we're going to be together for several months, right? But we're going to be discussing the issues that they bring to us, and also some very interesting, very accessible therapies for us. If we consider how vulnerable we are, right? And if you consider especially how humanity as a whole is undergoing such pain, such amount of suffering. This book is an amazing gift to humanity because it leads us to start to look at the root causes and accessing solutions to those problems that ails society as a whole. So the focus of the week is to get each topic and to use the topics to ask ourselves how, in my case, Marcia, how, Marcia, can I ensure I really am at the best place that I can be, that I need to be? What are the issues that I may not even be facing, I may be ignoring, that is preventing me from a sense of stability, a sense of balance, and hopefully emotional maturity despite of everything that may or may not come to our lives. So just briefly, I wanted to bring back the fact that the book itself is broken down into 9 parts, and with those 9 parts, as I said before, there are 40 chapters contained, but we are in the first part. If you look at it in this slide that is showing, it's called perturbation factors. So things that takes us off balance, right? So let's look into each one. There are 6 chapters in total. So each one of them and analyze, have the courage. That's the invitation to really look at them and have the courage to say, yes, this is something that is potentially preventing me to be all that I can be. And just to give a sampling on the titles of the chapters, yes, today we talk about routine, easy peasy, not so much. Next week, we're going to delve into anxiety and fear, loneliness, freedom. I don't know, social phobia, self discovery, religion, insecurity. I mean, she really goes into the entire gamut of the elements that make part of who we are as an emotional human being. Right. So, with that, I just want to be here to invite you to explore with me, alongside me, the themes that are brought here for us to discuss. They are front and center from those two lenses, as I mentioned before: Spiritism and depth psychology. So let's go ahead and get started with the largest topic here. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about all the components of this social transformation that we're going through. And I'm going to read the very, very, very first topic that she brings to you, so that we can say, Marcia, let's break down before going further. But she starts with, and I'm reading to you, the fundamental social transformation that resulted from the liaison of science and technology in the 19th century, so 1801 to 1900, right? Imposed the industrial and communitarian collectivism of modern days on the post-Renaissance competitive individualism. Let's break it down. Let's break it down, please. So I plan to go easy and slow because I had to unpack this simple paragraph with a better understanding. So, first of all, 19th century social transformation. What was going on in society? Again, this is from the lens of Western society, mostly European, right? That was the center of the world uh, based on our history at the time. So 1801 to 1900, what was going on? Society was in turmoil and changing very fast. Think from a historical lens, what happened before then? Yes, the Industrial Revolution. Before that was that post-medieval with Renaissance and post-Renaissance man, right? And before those 1,000 years of the medieval man, and then we talk about early Christianity, Greco-Roman times. So this is usually where Joanna brings our discussions in terms of thoughts, schools of thoughts, in terms of behaviors. So Greco-Roman, early Christian, Middle Ages, Renaissance, 1500, 1600, right? And then the post-Renaissance, all the way to where we are today. So 18th century, 19th century, 20th century, now early 21st. Lots has changed. One analogy that we have is of that clock, right? Where uh, creation of our planet took 23 hours and 59 minutes, and mankind came at the very last minute of those 24 hours. And boy, a lot has happened. But as the seconds get to the last 60 seconds of that 1 minute, right? When it gets to the 58th second, and of course, this is in relative terms, we see a lot happening. And let's just be interested in what happened from the lens of Joanna de Angelis. So she talks about 19th century social transformation that resulted from science and technology. And what we look here is really science and technology for the first time coming together, right? Coming together, and they what she calls imposed this industrial and communitarian collectivism as opposed to a competitive individualism. And I said, what? No, no way. We are not really living this communitarian collectivism. And before we say yes or no, let's just define those terms. Communitarianism is just a term, a philosophy that emphasizes the connection, the very intricate connection between the individual and the community that it belongs, right? And it's important. And we talked about it last week. So if you haven't taken the time to read the book or even listen to last week's discussion, please do so. It was our episode 2, right? First chapter of the book. Take a moment because she really, Joanna, really brings this school of thoughts to us. But in any case, when she says communitarianism is that philosophy in which the my identity, the person's identity and personality are very much molded by the relationship within our community, and it's we start to lose our sense of individualism because we're inserted in a collective society. And very interesting because this book was I believe was written in 1993, right? And no, 90, I'm sorry, 1990 was when it was published. And you keep thinking, 1990, what was going on in 1990? And it was the very beginning of the so much omnipresent social media, where we spent so much time and so much energy consuming as well as curating a story, this narrative about who we are as a component of this larger society. So she brings that communitarianism, right? It's an insertion of the human being, you and me, in that larger community. Now, she didn't say communitarianism only. She said communitarian collectivism. So, what is this collectivism? So that we further understand those two terms, it just simply means that um, the idea of the people prioritizes the good of society versus the individual. And I pause to think, and I say that, and I have mentioned this before, because in studies about where we are as different societies, as it relates to happiness, for example, we identify the country, culturally speaking, that I live right now, USA, is the this outlier of individualism as it relates to everybody else. So I'm in this outlier, so it's harder for me to say, Joanna de Angelis, you are spot on. We are really losing the desire for the competitive individualism that was so prevalent in the post-Renaissance society. What was that post-Renaissance society? It was a society that was no longer bound to the birthright, right? The bloodline, the aristocracy, that if you were born from this family or that family, and a lot of energy and investment of time was to preserve those alliances, if you will, those uh, partnership, business or love, I don't know, that existed, to a more individual. Yes, I am part of a city, of a community, and I can forge myself what I want to do. And that's how, interesting enough, how society started to transform. And I just pause a little bit, because we now, perhaps in that single sentence, as she says, that now science and technology is pushing us to individuals to be inserted and be part of this collective versus only the individual. But what is individualism, right? Individualism simply means that it is a, let's say, a moral stance, or a political philosophy, or even a ideology or social behavior that emphasizes my world, my individual world, my individual needs, my individual rights, my goals, my desires over everybody else. And also, alongside with that, which was really what was promoted post Renaissance, interesting enough, was the fact that you, individual, are becoming more independent, and there is a question of self-reliance, right? And you are aware of your rights, your interest, and a lot of the advocacies that happen in the post-Renaissance world begin with that. I know my right. I'm no longer going to be in a very much rigid structure, class structure, that you have those who have by birthright, and those that do not, that are forever and ever and ever bound to servitude, right? Does this make sense? And a competitive individualism, according to Oxford Dictionary, it just simply means, in sociology, that is um, the view that achievement or non-achievement of anything is all related or dependent on your merit. So, from a competitive, individualistic society, which is, yes, that's where I inserted, probably more than anyone else, that is not living in the US, just from a culture perspective, that competitive individualism really pushes us to understand that my effort, my ability, are the prerequisites of my success. So it is okay to compete. And unfortunately, the downside of that notion is that resources are limited, and not everybody will have it. So it's a society where scarcity drives behavior. I need to get all for me, because if I don't, I may not have it. So it's just very interesting, because it counters, and we're not going to talk today about this, but it counters to the idea of individuation. That's what this book is about, the process of individuation, which is based on Carl Jung's definition, right, of the process of transformation, where the personal and collective unconscious uh, are brought into consciousness by means of our imagination, our dreams, our association, and they are then taken into a process of integration or assimilation into our whole personality. So I hope it makes sense to you because I've thrown a lot, thanks to Joanna de Angelis, a lot of terms. Just to clarify, everyone, we talked about a social transformation that is resulted today from science and technology coming together post industrial revolution, post renaissance, and the post social revolution, industrial revolution, is all about this idea of a communitarian collectivism of modern days as opposed to a post-renaissance competitive individualism. And today this book, specifically based on a lot of the theories of Carl Jung from a psychology, depth psychology perspective, we're here not talking about individualism or competitive individualism, but we're talking about the ultimate goal of integration, of individuation. Whew, I'm tired already, and we've been at it for only a few minutes. But anyways, last week, we talked a little bit about René Descartes, the mathematician and the philosopher that left us this legacy that is amazing. What is the Cartesian thought process, which is, and I say that, I stop here. I can hear in my mind's eye the drum rolls. What is it, Marcia? It is that notion of duality. He specifically talks a lot about the body and soul, right? And this Cartesian thinking is all about the dichotomy. Is this your body needs? Is this your soul needs? But it led to this promotion of a social revolution, or not. No, I'm putting words where there are no words. Those are my words here. But this radical changes, right, in our social behaviors, collectively speaking. And the interesting thing here is I love that Cartesianism way of thinking, because once we start to look at the duality, the dichotomy of our body and soul, we also start to think about right, mind, body, is the mind your soul. More to come on that. Mind, body, good and evil, nature, nurture, nature, culture, and how do we understand the integration of polarized viewpoints of who we are, right? So those philosophical concepts that is brought by specifically by Descartes, but also many other individuals in the 17th century were talking about, and Spinoza, Francois Poulain de la Barre, etc., etc. They start talking about it. It all connects to, yes, Greek thoughts by specifically Socrates, Aristotle, all the way to the early Christians, St. Augustine specifically, when they talk about this idea of an argument of who we are. And it is really beautiful because it brings the idea that automatism, right, of living a life that is really pushed forward solely by the instinct of preservation of life, a very instinctive life. That I'm not saying that is good or bad, but just that instinctive push to survive, to eat, to procreate, to be an animal that has a very a band-like social behavior, herd behavior versus others, just from the preservation. And they talked about no, it's really about the ability of thinking, of consciousness. So René Descartes, in all the school of thoughts, the Cartesian thoughts, talked about what am I? Right? What am I? What are you? Well, it doesn't matter, but we are, quote unquote, is their literal quotes, a thing which thinks. And if you ask, what is a thing which thinks? It is a thing, I love it, that also questions, doubts, understands, assumes, conceives, affirms, denies, refuses, but also, and I feel like I want to cry because it's so beautiful. It is a thing that imagines and feels. That's the thing that we are. So back to Joanna, she says, yes, yes, Cartesian thinking is beautiful because it brings the dichotomy of body and soul, which has changed our behavior overall from that historical viewpoint. But remember what I said, a thing that thinks questions, a thing that thinks has a will. It may or may not refuse, or may not accept or deny, but also imagines and feels. In itself, the system of thought has led to conflicts, and they continue to exist and to grow, those conflicts in our personality. That is the majority of our discussion today. It is all about those perturbing factors in our personality that is born out of amazing growth in humanity. So, very much a paradox, and that's what Joanna de Angelis does so well. She brings us point counterpoint, point counterpoint, which we could say good, bad. We're not saying, but it's just the polar viewpoint. This happens, and there is growth in how we're doing, but then we get those other counterpoints that may mean trouble. Let's be aware of it. In any case, um, if you go back earlier in time in this rapid time travel upward and backwards, we have to also think about if today's science is so prevalent in how we collect data points, in how we see things, how we discover things, we also driving back in time in our imagination, we see a time where science was not so prevalent and superstitious and those superstitions, so that imagination led to behaviors that were quite extravagant. So I'm thinking Middle Ages, I'm thinking Inquisition, Crusade, and all this quite disturbing legacy of behaviors and normality of what was accepted, what was not, that is imprinted in our personality. So she says, Joanna, right, that prior to the Industrial Revolution, prior to Renaissance, there was the moment in time where we, right, on behalf of a refinement, right, we actually fell prey to those taboos, certain limitations of what is right, what is wrong. That is really important. She says, beware, right? Beware, because with that we also came upon false morals. Okay, false morals. We are becoming refined as a society, and we're saying what's right, what's wrong. We create superstitions on one hand, but also taboos on the other, and those taboos led to the definition of what's right and what's wrong. Those who are making mistakes or errors that should be no longer accepted in the humanity, right? The human personality. So back to what we're talking about, which is social transformation, I say, whew, ups and downs, ups and downs. We gain and we have setbacks, because the best of the best, as we interpret those gains, and collective we fall into other things. So, for example, and that's when we get to the meat of thing in terms of routine. I said, to me, when I first read this chapter and I saw the title, I'm like, this is a perturbation factor. No way. Routine good. And Joanna tells us, well, the changes in human behavior, like those radical changes that came about, they also had an attached consequence of certain social phobias, right? So, what is right, what is wrong, and then we start to inherit some phobias. If I am this, I'm afraid of being that. I am repressing, right? I'm going to repress because, and I'm just say as an example, a certain type of sexuality. And if I think about, let's say, me as opposed to my children and my children's children in the future, but also counter to my parents and my grandparents and so on and so forth, how, let's say, sexuality has changed. So lots of, on one hand, social phobias, even though they're changing, they were there, somehow inherited in all of us and how we think. And to avoid those phobias, we, this is generally speaking, we fall into mess conformism. So we, massively speaking, we fall into mainstream behaviors, thoughts, and cultural norms. And is it okay? Is it bad? Is it good? It doesn't matter. We don't have to judge here. But this is really where we have to think about where my sense of self, right? My sense of self is somehow squashed in favor of, I don't know, of what is accepted. And that may be in favor of, I don't know, I'm just putting things out there, a spiritual leader, a political leader, the queen, the king, I don't know, some norm that, or norms, collection norms that are established by a leader that will say, "Mm-mm, you're doing well," or no, you do not. And how do we deal with not being part of the norm? So we, out of phobia, social phobia or not, we want to belong, right? We want to belong so bad. And belonging, it will lead to that mass conformism instead of the ultimate goal. I mentioned to you before a couple of times already today, the ultimate goal of individuation of who we are. So think about social transformation and behavior changes somehow failed to promote healthy relationships. within our lives, right? So Joanna says the following. It is in, unfortunately, right? It is in its constant progress, at the same time, coupled by the absence, the lack of a corresponding eth- ethical, spiritual development. Science is a good candidate to steer humans toward nihilism and annihilation. Right? Nihilism, I'm sorry, nihilism and the concept of annihilation. And we talked a lot last week about it, about all the conflicts and how um, we as a human society, uh, we have the danger of becoming gone, right? Because if you think about it, this ever present um, war, conflicts, at the same time, more and more sophisticated, and with the advances of technology, weapons, we may lose our chance to be a human race in this planet at this time, after all. But back to Joanna, right? Back to Joanna. She talks about another, that we can say, another wrinkle. She adds another angle, another wrinkle to the analysis of our social and societal complexities, which is, I hope you thought about it. I didn't before I read the chapter, which is the booming explosion of population density, right? So we, not everywhere, but we today approaching a number of population size that is unsustainable to live on. But we have, through perhaps lessening, um, you know, infant mortality rates or the longevity of our lives, all those great things that science and technology has brought to us, we have many more people than we used to have, oh, say 70 years ago, let's say post World War II. But that booming in population density led to environments where there's so many people that we have to face inner city violence and homelessness due to socioeconomic disparity. So I, for example, I may have mentioned this before, but I live smack downtown of a city like Nashville, Tennessee, in the US. And I'm a witness on a daily basis of extravagant riches and the worst of the worst in misery and homelessness. So it is really undeniable, I would say, even predictable, to find a society that there's so much pressure, collectively speaking, but individually speaking as well. We are all victims of this pressure, of anxiety, of insecurity, and yes, violence. And by violence, I'm talking about the violence and the harm that we do to ourselves, the violence and harm that we do to others, and the violence and harm that we may be victims of because of this cultural time and this cultural era that we live on. And I ask, is there an answer to any of that? And interesting enough, Joanna calls this inequitable struggle. And what she's talking about is really the struggle between humanity, our human nature, and the humans versus machine, not machine a la the Terminator and Arnold Schwarzenegger that has become part of how we see that as human versus technology, right? But she really talks about humanity versus scientific technological advances, human versus machine, and she points out that we that's another interesting point here. I hope I am able to express myself well because it's quite interesting. Because she says, yes, there is this inequitable struggle where technology and science usually wins, so it's not equitable, and our humanity start to diminish. Okay, and she says that oh, wait a minute, there is a caveat there, because we do have a innate mechanism to ensure our emotional sense of security. Ho, ho, good stuff again, right? And she talks about those mechanisms are the ones that lead us to a sense of take it easy, Marcia, let's accommodate, let's survive. And it's really let's survive against abysmal conditions that we may face with all that's going on in society. And the problem here, and this is Joanna's words, right? The problem here is that it is a mechanism to preserve my sanity, but at the same time, it is a mechanism that is equally pathological, her words, right? It's a mechanism that will lead us to neurotic behaviors and a zillion type of uh, uh, response to those neuroses. She says, yes, we accommodate because there's so much pressure, so we get to a point that we accommodate, but we're also led to a sense of oppression. And the as we accommodate ourselves, we fall prey into this ever increasing sameness. We talked about it already a couple of times, and she brings that over and over again. Technology, science, accommodation as something that we cannot forget about it. Let's think about our own sense of self, our own sense of feelings and day-to-day anxiety and insecurities. Did you think about it? If the pressure is just too much, it's, I'm saying here, it's okay. We have that mechanism inside of us is saying, Mercy, it's okay. Let's just right, breathe. Let's survive. Let's also maybe settle. And what I mean by that is let's make life easier. Let's not put ourselves in a state of turmoil that is so large that we cannot survive. Let's do less. Let's have a very smaller set of objectives in life, that we are able to attain those objectives, that we are able to have a sense of accomplishment with a certain dose of facility or of ease. And I say, oh, somebody told me, a good friend of mine told me, yes, and we end up living charmed lives. What we mean by that, right? uh, right, he, a different person I was talking about, oh, some sort of frustration. I don't even remember what it was, but he mentioned to me that just in passing, oh, First world problem. And that was a slap in my face, right? We do live a charmed life. We do live in unprecedented uh, access to technology, to ease of doing things with less time. And yet our frustrations are still there. And yes, life is comfortable, life is predictable, and our problems have become so-called first world problems. And and I just pause here to echo Joanna's words or questions, right? Are we spending a lot of our time, our existence, as a neurotic life, right? That there's so much worry that we have taken away our enthusiasm for living, right? Or the idea that, yes, I can take on a new challenge because I'm so afraid that I need to limit my sphere of thought process, of idealization, of innovation, because I want to be circumscribed by this. No, I can handle. Give me something that I can handle. And I say, Joanna, that is harsh, right? It is harsh to think about either the pressure's too much, and if we follow our internal mechanisms to protect ourselves, Joanna is saying, are you protecting yourself from what you're here to do, which is to challenge and overcome those challenges? Ah, this is a catch 22. This is between a rock and a hard place. There is no winning, Joanna. And she says to all of us, let us settle down, right? Let us just calm down, not settle down. Let's calm down and just take the moment to ask ourselves, have we settled into a too easy life? Because we need to survive, or and she's not judging, right? If it's a survival, it's okay. Or have we settled because this is the norm? I look around and everybody's having the same type of a easy peasy type of life. And I wake up and I have my routine. Title of the chapter, I have my routine and it's easy. I go in and I'm saying this and I'm seeing myself, right? I get up, fall off the bed, if you will, joking here. I go get my cup of coffee, I drink, and then the day starts and more tomorrow. Have we settled because this is the norm? This is what's expected of me. And she invites us, and I'm about to end our discussion here today. So I appreciate you taking this time with me to break down this topic of routine. Now, she says, let's take stock of the society we live in, right? Is the need for security, for, I don't know, that sense of surviving, is this preventing us to further progress? Back to the first little paragraph. Remember, Middle Age, there's Renaissance, Industrial Revolution. In this post-Renaissance Industrial Revolution era, man is one that led to competitive individualism, and then science and technology comes to the rescue of mankind, right, of humanity, and brings this communitarian collectivism that is now leading to where we are today. Are we prey to a number of routines, habits, automatism, or This is Joanna's answer to where we are right now. So, very important for us to do this together. Or are we able to stop and reflect and think about how am I doing? What is my state of mind? Are we using our critical thinking? Remember the Cartesian philosophy, right? I am here because I'm a thing that thinks. Are we taking the time, as hard as it is to deal with the questions that we may have, but are we here able to think critically, to reason, or simply just accepting a routine that it's unchanging, right? Are we, and I'm going to pose here those little questions that she brought into the book. Are we retaking steps that are the same? Are we, it's terrible, are we maintaining the same uninteresting conversations? Yes, those are Joanna's words. Are we being boring? Are we coming back home, and this is post-pandemic statement is a little bit iffy because most of us don't even leave home, right? But we go back from our routine of, let's say not everybody, but let's say 9 to 5 or 8 to 10 p.m. Just getting here, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. But whatever it is, your routine, work, and then return home for the same distractions, those mechanisms to avoid us from thinking, right? Because that's what they are. They may be a mobile device and you scroll, or I plop in front of the TV, or video games, or whatever that may be that is distracting us until I retire. And then I see myself that potentially I am for the first time having to face my utter sense of loneliness, right? And she has a very interesting view. I love to travel. That's, I would say, the highlight of my year is to be able to travel, to explore. And she says even those planned travels, planned vacation, are they becoming so predictable and boring? It's all about this little school of fish, if you will, that they do exactly what the other does. And she ends with this series of questions by saying, is retirement really a time for you? Let's say Marcia, right? Marcia, I'm approached that time, so I can see in my mind's eye a time to rest and enjoy and grow, or is simple another type of existential futility. An existential futility just simply means a existence, a life that leads to nothing. So she closes this discussion with, what can we do to counter the pressures that were once sustained to us? Can we handle that, and how? Or do the fall to the monotony and the neurosis that we ourselves create to safeguard ourselves? Whoa, that's a lot, isn't it? Let's go ahead and go to our final time together, because she brings here the concept of human needs. And it starts with the fact that we are biosocial animals. We have a biological nature, but we are social animals, and we are built, designed. This machine here is built for uh, a sense of constant renewal and constant changes and experiences, initiatives. And if we think about it, and I remember somebody who's very, very, very dear to me, my father, who is always posing this question, which is really almost like a quantum physics type of questions when we say, what is this life, this biosocial mammal life that we have in? And we are the result of billions of years of cellular transformation. And Joanna adds, under the command of the Spirit. But why really? Right? Why do we have this elaborate, organic, psychic equipment, this body? Why? And it is here to reach our human evolutionary needs. And it's here to attain the future perfection that is there for all of us. And that future perfection is the perfect happiness. So let's think about it in closing. Work should just be that platform for us to really be in sync with all a platform of problem solving or any sort of stimulus for us to grow and grow our values, grow our talent, and not to bury them. And I'm thinking of Jesus' parables. And I say, what if instead we choose to, on one hand, as Jesus says, to keep our potential buried, inactive, because it's just a wasted opportunity to those billions of years of cellular transformation, or or we decide to actively engage in growing, in learning, in attaining that state of perfect happiness, right? That's our destiny. And think about it. No matter how society and the history, and I'm talking about here Western men, but the history of Western man have changed and adapted and attained amazing progress, we we will face frustrations, and we will potentially become numb, and we potentially our feelings will be one that emotionally speaking will feel attacked, and we may even be a victim or a perpetrator of violence to ourselves or to the others. But it's all a process of freedom from an imprisonment. And that's what I would like to close here today, with the idea that we can indeed break free. And think about, we break free either because of that the picture that she poses to us, Joanna de Angelis, is that we have a dam, but it rained too much, and there is a pressure from excess water that will break, just overcome the dam. And think about it. It comes with violence. It comes with destruction, that water. And that is a visual picture of where we are. If we keep holding on to all that is inside of us, we will break free sometimes with all that violence, but we have to deal with that, right? We have to deal with all the aggression and instincts and conflicts that we carry inside. And it is leading, that's breaking free, to a process, immediately speaking, of shock, of imbalance, right? Or another scenario is we seek help, spiritual support, and we start to look. This is quite interesting, right? Because start to look at life, at our habits, and let's start to embrace growth, mental and emotional expansion. And this is what Joanna leaves us with. Let us have an idealized life. Let us have love, compassion, solidarity to those around us. Let us do whatever it is that will lead us to the next step of our human transformation. So, Joanna closes with the invitation to allow our inner beings to have a more human experience. That experience that is in resonance with our spiritual ambitions that begin to command our inner disposition. So, with that, my dear friends, I want to say thank you for being here for this full hour. And I look forward to talking to you about anxiety next time. But this, I hope it's been as good to you as it's been to me, because it is a pause to think. Let us all break free. Thank you so very much, and I look forward to talking to you next week.